let me start with who's Deep Tech Canada. We're basically a national not-for-profit organization, and we are a deep tech integrator. We catalyze sectoral investments and emerging technology investments. We foster multidisciplinary collaborations, and we bridge the gap between emerging tech sector, and we focus on really solutions to global challenges. And we work with both nationally and internationally to create a market pull for deep tech. And so that's who we are, and we're so happy that you can join us today for this inaugural webinar. So we're very excited to basically partner on this first webinar with HardTech, the HardTech Investor Network. It's powered by Venture Lab, and the HardTech Investor Network is a deep tech focused investor network, and it backs up Canadian pre-seed and seed stage startups. And they offer vetted and curated select investment opportunities of high potential to support foundational companies that aim to improve our world. So also, we're going to look at how we can address the deep tech ecosystem that seeks to de-risk investments in deep tech. We'll hear from investors, from startups, and scale-ups as well today. So I hope you can be with us for the entire webinar, because we're going to have a very interesting conversation at the very end where we will entertain your questions. So here are a few housekeeping items so you can participate in today's event. At any time during the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions to today's presenters. And to do so, just type your question in the Q&A at the bottom of the control panel. And we will ask those questions during the Q&A session at the end of the industry presentations. And we will be recording this webinar as well, and we'll share the recording of the event on the Deep Tech Canada website. So with all of this said, then it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, which is Mr. Thomas Park. And Thomas Park is the co-founder and lead partners of the BDC Tech Fund, a VC fund that's focused on supporting Canadian startups, developing hard tech such as quantum computers, photonics, and foundational AI. Previously, he was a vice president, operations and ecosystem development at BDC Capital. And he also worked at McKinsey & Company and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Park to present the deep tech landscape in Canada. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Marie. So let me first say to thank the Deep Tech Canada team and the HardTech Investor Network for the really wonderful work in this country. What's interesting about Canada is we don't have a lot of innovation infrastructure. We have it's weird. We have a lot and not enough. On the one hand, we have over 200 accelerators and incubators or innovation centers in the country. We don't have any network really or platforms to support tough tech, which is actually Canada's strength, tough tech initiatives and startups. So really thank you for your leadership to you all. So what I'm going to do is I have a bunch of slides I'm going to go through, but not too many. I have 15 minutes, so I'm going to stop at 11:20 on the dot. And then what I will do here is I want to talk quickly about a little bit about the BDC, a little bit why our fund was created, what we focus on, but the bulk of it is what I'm seeing in the market in the last 12 to 24 months. So that's what I'll do. So let me talk a little bit about the BDC. And so the BDC is a Crown corporation. So we're a for-profit company with one shareholder, the federal government in Canada. So it does essentially three things. It provides loans to people in different ways, whether it's like, when I grew up in a dépanneur in Quebec to like a large manufacturing plant of 500 people. It provides specific type of capital, which is risk capital, whether it's private equity up to seed investing or early stage seed investing. That's right. That's with my team. And advisory services provides consulting services to a bunch of our clients as well too. So here's a kind of a snapshot of BDC Capital. We're the most active VC investor in the country. We're over in like 100 funds, different funds in the country, and we have a number of direct investment teams to address specific gaps in the market. So we have a women in tech team, we have a climate tech team, and I represent the deep tech team as well too. So why was our fund created? So our fund was primarily created to address the gap in the market, which is that, as many of you know, that we have a commercialization gap. We're really great at the research, which is the global innovation input. So for a small country like Canada, we're in the top 10. But we're not great at commercializing this kind of research. And it's in this current market, we're just getting worse and worse and worse in a lot of ways. But our fund was created to kind of demonstrate by investing in Canadian deep tech startups, you can do quite well in this market. And so that's what our fund is about. So we invest early stage, so that's often be seed, primarily seed, but sometimes Series A, sometimes pre-seed. In the Canadian startup, so you'll have to be headquartered here, or there's a Canadian entity. And so we do a wide range of technologies, which I get into, with the exception of not biotech or anything require FDA approval, because that just requires its own expertise. Our fund life is 12 years with the possible extension. Portfolio size, we're trying to aim for 15 to 18, and we're $200 million. And we work with a wide variety of organization here. Venture Lab is a great partner of ours. Melissa Chi is a close friend, great, just an amazing organization. So we work nationally. And what do we mean by deep tech? We're looking for some kind of fundamental advance in a science. So we're comfortable with higher technology risk companies. That's important. We're not comfortable with high commercial risk companies, but we're comfortable with high technical risk companies. So just a bit of an overview of some of the sectors we look at. Quantum, we have a couple of quantum computing companies. Here's a good example on the extreme end of deep tech. Very difficult technical engineering scientific challenges. But we believe that once a machine is built, that the market will be unlocked. So you'll see we're a bit of a quantum winter right now, because for a lot of quantum software companies, it's hard to build a company unless there's a machine in place. So right now our focus is on making sure that Xanadu and Norquantic are hitting their technical milestones. And then we do foundational AI, electronics, some drones and robotics, advanced materials, but we do leave biotechnology and life sciences out. So let me spend the remaining 10 minutes, just one moment, friends. The remaining 10 minutes on the market gap here. So I think I've got the wrong slides here. I use the same slide so far. So what I'll do, I will stop presenting, and then I will go on to the deck I'm supposed to share. Do you see it? Seb, do you see it? You see the deck? You should. Thumbs up? Okay, great. So I'll work off of this deck.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Yes, we can see.
Great. So I want to show the bit of the VC market overview. So what is going on here? So each of the bars represent the amount of capital that was invested by quarter, and each of the blue dots represents the number of deals. And so this is the latest update from the Canadian Venture Capital Association data. I sit on the board, so I chair the data committee, just fantastic team. And so there's a few things you're seeing what's happening. Since 2021, there's been an overall decrease in the amount of capital being invested. and then the number of deals that are being done. There's some stabilization, but that's essentially the overall story here, is that there's less and less investment activity in the country. So I want to show you another slide. This breaks down the annual data, but down by certain stages. Now, definition, pre-seed, seed, Series A, B. It's not like perfect, but it gives you a sense that the later stage investment capital, Series A onward, has gone down, but the seed investments still remains quite robust. So what's going on here? I think I'll say this in the end, but what's really going on is that we're in a transition period between two cycles. So we are coming out of a cycle where that was essentially characterized by very low interest rates, lots of capital, and we're moving into a cycle where it's higher interest rates and less capital available, or equities become more expensive. So a lot of companies that have raised money during COVID or seed money during COVID are not doing well for a third factor, because the business environment has changed a lot. So because IT budgets are being cut, because large tech companies like AWS, Microsoft, and Google are offering better quality services to their enterprise clients, and also because of open source or platforms like OpenAI, etc., or Anthropic. This makes it technical more difficult, so the business models are becoming more difficult. Now, here's the thing: you want to look at the seed. What's happening at the seed is the investment level has gone slightly up, but the number of deals has gone down. So it's suggesting, what I'm seeing in the market is that when a company hits the metrics, so it has the right characteristics, the round is oversubscribed very quickly. That means that that founder does not have a problem raising money. The question is, from who will they take money from? So it's an interesting dynamic here. So here's some of the takeaways. Investors are holding on to a lot of dry powder. So what that means is that investors have raised a lot of money, but are holding on to it and not deploying it at the same level. So there's almost more than $1 trillion of dry powder in the market, where investors have raised the money, but have not deployed it, because again, we're in this transition where they're not finding the right deals. So you hear that from a lot of investors are struggling with pipeline. This is what they refer to. Companies that do hit the metrics raise the rounds very quickly. We're in the middle of two transitions of two different cycles, and deep tech companies are facing stronger headwinds because it is taking them longer to generate revenues. There is one exception, and I would say it's the ESG market or climate tech market, because there was an allocation of capital by large institutional investors towards ESG and climate tech, but that may or may not be renewed. So that might be just for a temporary phenomenon. It may be regressing to the mean, where people have a lot of capital, but equities become more expensive for founders and they really need to hit the metrics. So I'm going to spend the last 5 minutes on what does that mean for you as a deep tech founder. One, the post-COVID market is very different from the last. Investors are very much less interested in science projects. So if it's very interesting IP, you're a researcher, if there isn't a very compelling business, you'll face headwinds in terms of raising money, more so now. So I would recommend focusing your company on being investor ready. So one, and I would think this is one gap I've observed with a number of Canadian deep tech startups. Management rarely has the expertise in the industry they're targeting. So let's say, for example, you are a robotics company and you're looking at the farming, for example. So ideally, the CTO, the team has got an amazing technology, etc., but the CEO or management does not have the expertise of actually selling into that industry. They weren't an executive at John Deere, or they haven't worked on Monsanto, etc. You could have gotten away with that where capital was cheap, and so investors are willing to let you learn on the job in a certain way. That's less so now. Two, a differentiated technical moat, and I'm speaking especially both the hardware and software teams. So because how quickly things are evolving, whether it's drones or robotics, or on the even on the compound semiconductor side, and even on the artificial intelligence side, you've got to have a differentiated technical moat, and that might be one either you've got an expertise in an industry, or again you've got IP, or you have a differentiated data.
Okay, we seem to have some technical difficulties.
Sorry, I'm back on. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sorry. I've got 2 minutes, but I don't have much left to say. So
that's okay. Take your time.
Differentiate technical moat, attractive market size. Now, this will be tested even more about the market potential. And so you can use comparables. Well, this startup raised X number, X amount, and their valuation was here, and the market size, according to McKinsey report, is that. What we're going to be driving down is bottoms-up analysis. And this is the test drive also your financial model. So if you say you're going to raise $10 million in 24 months, we're going to count, all right, so walk us through how many clients, how much are they going to pay, what's the decision making, and that again comes down to industry expertise. And the final thing is a clean cap table and clear IP rights. So cap table, this often is an issue with university spinoffs, where either the university takes a big chunk of equity and a perpetual license, etc., that needs to be cleaned up. Or for example, a lot of university professors have created a startup, but they're part-time. They say, I'm taking a 2-year sabbatical and I've only got one class a week. That's still not full-time, even after the sabbatical. You need to find a CEO to run the company. But if you're still holding on to 50% of the company, you're not going to attract a CEO that's going to take the company to the next level. I think Darwin AI was a very good example where Alex Wong, the researcher, created a space to bring on somebody amazing like Sheldon. And I think the final thing I would say is I come from a venture capital perspective. So VC is a very specific type of capital. Not all great companies are VC backable. Like I say no 99% of the time. Not all companies have to seek to generate $100 million of recurring revenue in 5 years. There's many, many, many different ways. If you're generating 10 to 20 million a year in revenue in 5 years, like they're already in the top decile of companies in Canada. So again, really ask yourself if VC is the right route. Maybe it's some other people, etc., other like corporates or like angels or private equity or debt, or even best of all, revenue. That's probably the best way of raising money. So I'll pause there.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for this fascinating talk. And I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. We'll have a chance to ask you more questions at the very end. Thanks. All right. So next up is Mr. Sefer Asadian. So Sep is a vice president of founder success at Venture Lab, where he oversees all the advisory support for startups while also supporting the York's region entrepreneurial ecosystem in general. And under SEP's leadership, the founder success team assists Venture Lab clients with strengthening their value proposition, commercializing products, expanding their market, improving global investment readiness, and growing their teams and scaling globally. So SEP is also the founder of the HardTech Investor Network, which we talked about at the beginning, a one-of-a-kind investment network for Canadian and international investors interested in deep tech and hard tech deals. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Asadian to speak to us about powering hard tech across Death Valley. SEP.
Thank you very much, Marie. It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, everyone. And I am honored to be here talking about what we do here at Venture Lab and HardTech Investor Network to support our companies and who we definitely kind of always looking forward to support. I have a couple of slides that I would like to kind of share. Okay, can you see my screen? I assuming that you can see my
Yes, we
slides.
can.
Okay, perfect. So, as Mecca mentioned, I'm the VP of the Founder Success here at Venture Lab, as the only hard tech and deep tech focused accelerator incubator in Canada and one of a kind in North America, and also the founder and the network lead for a HardTech Investor Network. But what exactly we do here at Venture Lab, I want to kind of just show you in one slide, and that's what we do. We are supporting the founders that they have an idea, great idea. They have developed that idea, and now they are in the prototyping, exploring what exactly that idea look like in the lab, and now they want to kind of take it to the market. And there is a kind of the huge gap in between. We call it Death Valley, and this is kind of our vehicle, Venture Lab, is here to support them, to take them from to over kind of to the Death Valley and get them to the commercialization. This is what we do, helping the companies get to the commercialization stage, and this is what we are good at it. And we have different resources and capacities and infrastructure to make it happen. And I will walk you through each one of these elements through in my slide, and then a couple of kind of to the ideas that we believe it's important for the founders in the deep tech to understand how this ecosystem can support them on that end. So we have been in the business for almost 15 years, and as part of our DNA, our mission, we are here to power the hard tech founders to build and scale globally that advance the Canada's knowledge-based economy. Definitely, when we talk about the hard tech, we are not only talking about the hardware. We are defining the hard tech as any technology that has a kind of to the longer path on the commercialization, similar to the software or SaaS or any kind of to the similar technologies and solution. And this is where we focus on that one. As part of kind of to our business in the last 5 years, we have delivered kind of to that lots of support for companies in that area, including around the 4,000 tech ventures. We had a privilege to work with them, supporting them to create a job, creating the revenue, and definitely raise the capital on that end, and building the infrastructure, the lab we have here at that venture lab on that end. And this is a kind of the what we are good at it. We are supporting our companies around the four particular pillars that we believe is essential for any deep tech and the hard tech company to grow and scale and move to the kind of that more sustainable stage in their journey on their journey. The capital, we implemented kind of the different programs, and I will talk about our network, the HardTech Investor Network, to provide opportunity for companies access to the capital, particularly in the early stage investment, working closely with the leaders in that area like BDC and Thomas Park and his team. On that end, it was something that we have worked with them for almost kind of to the 3 years since the inception of the deep tech fund from the BDC on the talent, not only working with a number of the leading engineering schools all across Canada to support the fresh grad talents on that end, but also we have an expert hub, which is a talent pool for the people in the senior executive capacity that they can work with the startups, as Thomas mentioned, as a fractional in the kind of to the short term, but hopefully kind of in the long term become a part of the team as an executive team. It could be the people in the technical or the business level. Under technology and IP, we have a facility, we have an infrastructure here that I will walk you through that one, and also we have a heavy support around IP, working closely with a number of the national and the provincial IP focused programs like Elevate IP, IPON, and Assist IP. And we also have a dedicated team in IP supporting the companies. Particularly, this is a kind of to the gap we recognize for the deep tech and the hard tech companies understanding the IP beyond just kind of to the granting the IP, having their IP portfolio, IP strategy, and beyond on that one. And finally, the ultimate goal for everyone is securing the kind of to the customers, working with the companies to secure the customers. That majorly, the most of the companies in the hard tech and the deep tech, their solutions is not designed for a Canadian market. As a small market, those of the solutions generally become local, built locally, but kind of to the with how it has a kind of to the global approach. So building the market channels, access to those markets that the deep tech and the hard tech companies needed to approach from the day one. This is something that we offer around our program on that end. I walk you through the kind of to that pillars particularly, but what I want to say is that kind of to the it's not only limited to the hardware. We also support companies that they have a kind of to the some software solutions, but again, we majorly focus on the areas that need a longer commercialization journey and also need a kind of to the more patient money, which is a kind of to that a gap in Canadian innovation ecosystem. And we were super excited about the BDC Deep Tech and a couple of other VCs that started to change that narration in Canadian investment ecosystem around that one. Then when we started that and with this program, we did a deep market analysis about why we need to kind of to the launch this program and what is the kind of to the big gap in the Canadian ecosystem for deep tech and the hard tech companies to move forward and get to the kind of the growth and the scale stage, and then they can kind of to the secure the revenues, they can secure the capital and sustain their business on that end. So based on an analysis, there are three main gaps we recognize in the Canadian ecosystem for deep tech and hard tech. The first one is about to kind of to the upfront investment. Any deep tech company requires a substantial upfront investment for their R&D to get to the kind of to their prototyping from the lab facility to something like kind of to the commercialized stage viable product that they can bring it to the market. And this is something that majority of the investors, particularly in Canada, always kind of to the hesitate to invest because there is a kind of the lots of cost and there is a kind of to the high lots kind of to the high risk in front of them when they kind of to the invest in the companies. So this is a kind of the first piece that, okay, removing the barriers on upfront investment by creating the facility that they can share. It could be shared between everyone in the deep tech area, that they can all get benefit of that one, and remove that barrier for investors and the founders we have on that one. The second one, it's about the ecosystem and infrastructure support, the experts that we have in that area that we can kind of bring them in, about the companies and the partners we have around us that providing the resources and the support for companies in the deep tech is not allocated or aggregated in one place in the past. And we built up a customized network of the partners and collaborators and the stakeholders that they have a meaningful contribution in the commercialization path for the founders. And it's not only about the services they provide, it's also about their network, the people they have we have in this ecosystem. And then finally, it's about the IP protection. Protecting the IP is a critical and a challenging, costly. Definitely, it's a kind of to the one of the most expensive the procedure that companies will go through that one on that end, but also understanding that which of these kind of the innovations needed to be patented or secured, and then how they can protect their innovations from the competitors. And the knowledge, the gap of the knowledge around that area hurts deep tech companies a lot. And this is a kind of another area that we focus our programming to support our founders around that one. So after analyzing the market, we came up with this analysis that, okay, we need to kind of launch a program that address all of these challenges and remove those barriers. And we'll launch our Harder Catalyst initiative to focus on the building the companies that they can grow and scale and sustain in Canadian market, serving the global opportunities on that one, and removing the kind of those commercial barriers and building the global ecosystem around the founders based on their need on that end. And it was a successful approach from our angle with securing that 60 global partners that we have around us so far, and around the $55 million contribution they made in the innovation ecosystem in Canada, with all focus on the deep tech and the hard tech on that end. So this is a kind of the infrastructure I want to talk to you about that one. As a first barrier, I mentioned about the upfront investment. The one of the key upfront investment needed for companies to move taking from the prototyping to the commercialized stage product is access to the lab that is giving them all the opportunity for testing and providing all the requirements infrastructure to make that journey happen. And this is what we built. With a focus on the hardware and the focus on the medtech, we built a facility to make that happen. It's a $11 million world-class prototype in the testing lab. And there is a kind of to the $17 million investment from the Canadian government and a $55 million from the private sector, make it as a unique place. And it's not limited to companies that are out of Ontario. It's open to every Canadian company that they are qualified to access to this program, or beyond that, interested to access to this infrastructure based on the subscription model we offer to the companies, which is almost 90% discounted compared to any facility if exists in the commercial world. And they can access to this one even for a couple of days, even for a couple of months. So we can customize that opportunity for anyone interested to access to this facility, or even have a tour if you are around our facility north of Toronto for other reason. By all means, just message me. We'll happy to set up something for you to be there. But we believe that this is something that we remove the kind of to the significant barrier for companies on the commercialization path. Based on our study in the 5 years of running this program, we believe in average for any company that we support, we removed around the $3 to $5 million upfront investment needed by providing that network as well as the infrastructure. Also expedite the commercialization path by the 1 to 2 years through the experts and the partner access on that one. And this is a kind of to that we support around the kind of to the 4,000 startups companies for a kind of to that purpose in general, but around 100 companies in particular in the hardware, we supported them in the last 5 years through our programs, and around the 200 other companies outside of the programs had access to this facility. And we claim that we kind of did the support around 150 commercialized product came out of our lab facility in the last 5 years. But we are not done yet on that one. We continued our study regarding the gap in the market, and we recognized three other kind of to the particular gap after the companies go through that commercialization journey with us is still tackling. It's about the early stage investment gap that we thought kind of that in the 5 years from the time that we launched our first study should get better, because there are lots of stuff happening during the COVID, and then the kind of lots of the deep tech conversation came up, like kind of the med tech and then the semiconductor and others. But still, we see the kind of the early stage investment gap is particularly hurts the commercialization, the Canadian startups in the commercialization path. The second one was about the lack of local international market channels. As much as we are good, and this is what Thomas mentioned about that one, as much as we are good with the deep tech and the hard tech technologies to take them from the kind of to the research to the prototype and then filing the pattern and then kind of to get it to some papers and everything, the commercialization, and then get it even kind of to get the product to the market as a next step to generate revenue and then sustain the company. It's a huge gap, and this is what we try to kind of to address that one. And then finalizing is about the commercialization expertise, which is a kind of to it's a combination of the lack of the market, local and international market channels. It's something that we needed, as Thomas again mentioned about the kind of you need someone expert in the sales and the marketing and all the stuff. having the experts in the commercializing the products in the deep tech and hard tech is another gap that we have seen around that one. And you see the kind of to the and those statics around that one. Only kind of to the 11% of the startup funding in Canada was in the kind of to the deep tech. Or if you look at the kind of to the commercialization, deep tech companies are found in the US, and then the one in the leading commercialization states, and only kind of to the 4% in Canada. And if you look at the kind of to the history of maybe that 68%, you will see a number of kind of to the names familiar to you that they were Canadian and they moved to Canada, or the founders are Canadian and now they kind of to the move to US, and that's a kind of the big gap that we need to address on that one. I have kind of to the 4 minutes and I will go as quick as possible. So to address those three kind of to the items that I mentioned, we started to do a little more on delivering and completing a kind of to that our service package to the founders we work with, and the Canadian deep tech companies that we work here at Venture Lab. One was about that in HardTech Investor Network. The HardTech Investor Network is an initiative designed to support the investors that they are experts, interested, or excited about investing in the deep tech and the hard tech around that one, by providing some kind of to the value proposition for them. Whatever we do at Venture Lab, it's all about the founders. This particular network and investment club, it's focused on the investment ecosystem to deliver some value proposition for them, to remove the barriers from their angle to invest more in the hard tech and the deep tech Canadian companies, to sustain them and then keep them grow and scale and sustain in Canada. And that's something to kind of to that I'm always kind of to that sorry to see that many of these phenomenal entrepreneurs, phenomenal researchers ended up to kind of to that in kind of to that moving to US, moving to kind of to the even Europe or the South Asia, because they couldn't kind of to the get to the next step, and then even kind of the small checks could help them, but because of the barriers in front of the investors, they couldn't kind of to invest, or they don't feel comfortable to make that investment around that one. And this network, we hope kind of to make that change. We'll celebrate the first anniversary in the next couple of weeks. Around that one, we have around the 60 members. 2/3 of the members are institutionals, and any company interested to pitch in front of this network, by all means, you can reach out to me. We'll happy to kind of to connect you to the team. This network run by the investors. We are administration on the side to facilitate that investment opportunities by increasing the capital and the knowledge access in the deep tech, opportunities in the syndication, and definitely bringing more international money, investing in Canadian to keep them in Canada, to helping the investors understanding the technology validation, and definitely for the companies getting out of this network, investing through this network, they will have a kind of the full support for the post-investment coming from the Venture Lab, including the lab facility, the experts hub, the expertise, and also our access to our partners on that one. So we hope to kind of by removing those barriers for our investors in that area, we will have a kind of the more interest from the general investment ecosystem in Canada to invest in the deep tech around that one. And last but not the least, you are not alone in that one. And we to make it as a global ecosystem, we also kind of work with international companies, and we bring the international companies to address that gap, and also kind of to that bring them in the capacity that they can collaborate. And we want to kind of to the build, make Canada as a spot, as a destination for the deep tech and the hard tech companies. In that capacity, we also kind of to deliver a program for inbounding companies coming to Canada to develop and grow their deep tech solutions from Canada to the global market. And we couldn't do that alone. It's need a village, and we are proud of every collaboration and every name we have here. And definitely Deep Tech Canada as our kind of to the newest one. We will kind of to the, it's a part of the partners as a newest one, that we will continue our collaboration, and we will believe that there are a lot we can do for our deep tech ecosystem. And yeah, I will kind of wrap up my presentation by saying that if you're in the deep tech and you need any support, as I mentioned, by all means, reach out to me. And thank you, Mary and Deep Tech Canada, for providing this opportunity on that end, and happy to answer any question at the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Seth. It's a very impressive work from Venture Lab. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Monsieur Richard Cloutier. By the way, I just wanted to say if you have questions, use the Q&A to register your questions. Richard is the managing partner of the EcoFuel Fund. It's an early stage investment fund that's focused on climate change solutions. And with nearly 40 years of experience in innovation development, business startups, and business development strategies, Richard has made significant contributions to the field. And previously, he served as president and CEO of both the EcoFuel Accelerator and the Centre québécois de valorisation des biotechnologies, organizations that are dedicated to fostering innovation and technology transfer in the bioindustry sector. Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marie. Merci, Marie. Thanks for Deep Tech Canada, HardTech Investor Network. I don't have any slides because I was pretty sure then Thomas and Seth get those slides. And actually, I'm in a company that we invest in Deep Tech between the board meeting and the AGM this afternoon. So I will just put some maybe data or ideas for the discussion later on. So as mentioned, as the managing partner of the EcoFuel Fund, we invest in deep tech company for the goals to reduce the GHG emission. We had the 40 million funds, vintage of 2017, dedicated to pre-seed and seed level, and we invested in hardware and software also. That's not a lot of VCs that want to look at hardware because it's tough, it takes long, and the time is pretty the essence of a VC fund. I have to say that BDC, it's an LP in our fund, so everything that Thomas said was right, but I will use the same data that he showed earlier, but maybe look at it at different ways. We saw 100 qualified proposals a year, and as mentioned, Thomas, he said no most of the time. So we said yes to 2% of the deals that we've seen over the years. Actually, we're trying to raise a new fund. As for the company, it's tough for VC to raise money. Actually, the business model evolve, the interest rate, everything you can think about applied also for VC. And for VCs, it's the good results are not have invested companies. We need exit, we need good clients, we need good returns. And if you think that with the interest rate at 5% now, why LP is asking us is to give them more than a 5% return on investment. We also got investor from Japan, from US, from Europe. It was VCs or corporate ventures. And I titled my talk about de-risking or risk early. I think for deep tech to be able to de-risk a technology, we need also to invest early. And that's in Canada part of the problem, even though that Thomas mentioned that the seed investment, we're doing pre-seed and seed, but the seed investment is robust actually, but it's very tough for companies to get a VC that will look at their product, their technology. And that's why I want to put it on the table and be able to discuss it later on. If we need to de-risk any technologies, we must invest early in both the technologies, but also the funders. That's a problem actually that we are seeing, and Seth with his organization will help you about that. But a lot of companies came to us and said, I got the TRL, whatever the number that they said to me. I said, I don't want to see the TRL. I want to see the CRL, the company readiness level. And most of the time is not too high. So it's important also to think about the development of a product, not a technology, but a product, but also to get the management team, the person in charge that will be internationally ready on day one. You will heard about it a lot, but Canada is a very small market. Even though we have good science, good research, like Mary mentioned in the introduction, and work in the innovation sector for 40 years, I saw a lot of good technologies at the lab scale. But actually, we need to think about the market in Asia, the market in the US, look for capital in those countries also. So we need to think internationally very soon. But for a VC, we need to understand the risk. And actually, people present the technology, but don't understand the risk associated to the technology. The company need to define the risk, to outline how they will manage it. Risk factor include technology, but also the risk for the market readiness, the risk for the sales cycle, the risk for the product development, the risk for the what I call the client enthusiasm. They will buy or will not buy the product. And usually when you start with a client, you're excited about, he told me about that he's interested, but the level of enthusiasm to write a check to you, it's something that is very important. The burn rate that you got, and also the what I call the investor patience. A lot of investors will say we are there for the long term, but like Thomas mentioned, they had the 12-year time for their fund. In 2017, I got the 10 years time for my fund. So it means that at the end of the term of 10 years, I need to write a check to my LPs for the return, for the interest that they charge me, for the expectation that we got for those companies that we invest in. I know that with the COVID things, it postponed for 2 years the returns for a VC like us. But a company need to understand the VC thinking of taking money from them and be able to get an exit, get returns, and be able to go further with their clients. I will say also that usually VCs or people think about high risk, high reward, but VCs is mainly high reward, low risk. Time is of the DSM, like I mentioned. Let's say that I take your spreadsheet, financial spreadsheet, and I cut the revenues by 2, and I postpone it for a year. So look at the number at the end and the changes that happen when you're doing that. And when we are doing our due diligence, that's the type of thing that we're making with the assumption that you're presenting to us. Other thing that I want to use with the numbers, so I look at the BDC got a report, I think, Thomas, last week. CVCA got a report. I also got reports from Réseau Capital in Quebec. And with the same number that have been presented, I will just mention that the number of deals overall was 147 in 2021, and now it's 650 deals. So why we have actually less deals than we get in 2021? That's why I promote also to be able to invest in very early in technologies to be able to get those deals for Series A and for later investment. And de-risking also means looking at pre-seed and seed. And we don't have a lot of data related to this very precise investment part. But in 2021, we got just for the pre-seed and seed investment 274 deals. And in 2023, we have 230 deals. So it's again less deal for the pre-seed and seed. And if we are not investing in early stage, it's going to be tough to get a good Series A and good investment later on. And just for the ICT sector, I think Thomas mentioned it also. It experienced a significant downturn. In 2021, we got a little bit less than 500 deals, and in 2023, we are 300 deals. So it's very hard for companies to get access to a VCs, and actually the dollars is very tough to get. But you need to get a good idea, but again, you need to get a good management team to be able to reach it. I look at the numbers that I want to put on the table, like I mentioned, for discussion. Deal under 500K have been increasing, reaching 23% of all these in 2023. So this part is very important for the company that are looking for investors. And just to put it also in other numbers in your mind, the average deal size was in 2019 at 1.69 million, and now it's around 2.5 million. So when you're thinking about a deal size in early stage investment, and you're thinking that your company worth, I don't know, 5 to 10 millions, the usual deal, it will be at around 2.5 million. So if you're looking for 2.5 million and your valuation is at 5 million, make the math to be able to look for the dilution that you will have in your company. Maybe other just few numbers to start the discussion. 29% minus 29% of deal count. I presented it. Also the follow-on investment. What it's not in the data that I've looked at the reports of CVC and others, we are low in the Series A, but because of the pandemic and other things, we have done a lot of C plus investment in our portfolio. So that's why we need early stage fund, like the one with BDC, but others, we need more early stage fund with deep pocket, because you don't know if you're going to have something like a pandemic and you need to put a seed plus investment round to be able to keep the companies at a level to develop their product. And maybe the last one I will talk about, it's the level of investment that are still looking for companies. Take round by round, because a lot of CEOs look at the dilution effect that they got actually in their company, and they don't want to take the capital because it will be a big dilution. But think that you have to go to deliver some result, and the valuation of the company will be based on the result you can get with the development of your company. So a small check in Canada will help you from a VC, will help you to get a lot of grants, a lot of support. In our sector, we got SDTC, we got other big organization that could put you a check of 2.5 million. But it's important to get this amount of money early in your process, but you have to get those goals and be able to get further step by step, because sometimes companies management look at us and said, okay, we're going to be there in 5 years. I don't ask to get result from 5 years. What's the next step in the next 6 months, the next year? So go step by step, and it will be very useful for you to get access to this, I will say, small amount of money that you can get at the pre-seed and seed level. When you get at the Series A and you get good result with a good management, it will be a good path for you for the next step. So, Marie, I will just stop here to be able to have more time to get a discussion with the panel and the people in the room.
Merci beaucoup, Richard. C'était très intéressant. And so now we'll go ahead and we'll hear from two companies, and we'll hear about how they fared in this world. And so it's really my pleasure to introduce Ms. Aziz Kaur. Aziz Kaur started with Voxel as a member of their hardware engineering team, where she provided support on subsystem design and rapid prototyping of Voxel's perfusion chamber. And during her time as a mechanical engineer, she assisted the CEO in pitching and fundraising, operations management, and finance management. This prompted Assis transition into her current role as the business operations coordinator, where she leads the sales and marketing of Voxel's Universal Bioinks. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Kaur to speak to us for about 7.5 minutes about her startup journey to the incubator and accelerator stage. Assis.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Marie. I'm just going to share my screen. Please let me know when you can see that. I believe you can now. Okay, sounds good. So good morning, everyone. My name is Assis Kaur. Yes, and I'm the Business Operations Coordinator at Voxel Bioinnovation. And I'm really excited to be joining you here at the Deep Tech webinar on de-risking deep tech. So I'd love to give you a little bit of a background on Voxel. So did you know that the drug development process has a staggering 95% failure rate? So an industry that invests over 15 years and more than $3 billion on drugs that never even make it to the market. The failure rate is tied to how drugs are currently tested. So it all begins in the lab, and then it moves on to human testing where the results just do not match, simply because we do not have an accurate platform to predict human behavior until now. So among drug developers, Voxel has created the brand of advanced bioprinted human-like cancer tissue models that outperform competitors in drug predictability. So we are able to identify the non-viable, so ineffective drug candidates much earlier in the process, dramatically reducing testing time and costs. So at Voxel, we harnessed our 100% proprietary technology to develop highly advanced human-like cancer tissue models. So our innovation combines our high-resolution bioprinter, our trait vascularization software, which actually allows us to print a blood capillary network within our tissue models, our universal bioink that serves as our printer's cartridge. It mimics the mechanical and chemical properties of human tissue, alongside of our custom perfusion device. So the result ends up being this 3D human-like cancer tissue model. So pharmaceutical companies can now directly inject their drug candidates through the vasculature of a tissue model. So we're able to create blood vessels as small as 0.5 micrometer. So to give you a reference, that's 200 times smaller than the width of human hair. This process enables early identification of non-viable candidates much sooner. The best part is, as we utilize these models for screening drugs, there is no need for FDA approval. The 2021 FDA Modernization Act actually encouraged the pursuit of alternatives to in vivo models. And for the first time, bioprinted tissue models like Voxels are officially recognized as viable alternatives to animal testing. So that's a little bit of a background on Voxel. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about our journey and why we're here today. And I'd briefly like to discuss some of the major challenges we faced in our journey to commercialization within the deep tech sector. So within R&D, creating our high-resolution bioprinter from scratch was a significant challenge. Of course, it required a lot of extensive trial and error. However, our major challenge was that we really required expert guidance in optics and hardware and development of the hardware. So another challenge on top of that was the integration of all of our proprietary technologies, right? So we have the bioink, we have the vascularization software, we have the printer. How are we going to seamlessly integrate that together? And lastly, which has definitely been discussed here a lot today already, is deep tech is capital intensive. And securing the necessary funding to first create our printer and hire the personnel and have the necessary equipment required was a constant challenge. Additionally, on top of that, Being in the biotech industry, our initial R&D operations were fragmented across different facilities, meaning that each one of our departments, hardware, chemistry, tissue engineering, they were all at different spaces. We were actually renting lab spaces within a university, which came with constraints on space, hours, equipment, and usage. And lastly, when we're looking more on the BD side of things and corporate strategy, there was initial hurdles in identifying and understanding the market needs that were crucial to align our product development and market demand, and finalization of our product for commercialization as well. So what support did we receive? So I'd like to highlight some of the key resources that have been instrumental in supporting our growth as a deep tech company in Canada. One of the largest ones, and it's still continuous to Voxel, and we're 4 years down the line now for the company, is we received a lot of critical one-on-one mentorship through accelerators and incubators. One of the largest ones being Venture Labs, that's with us here today. And we received mentorship and continue to do so actually in business development, finance, IP protection, which was quite large for Voxel, especially with our 100% proprietary technology, and of course, growth strategies. These programs also facilitated introductions to angels, VC groups, and of course, opening our horizons to sources of non-dilutive funding, such as grants and awards as well, which are very crucial for our financial stability in our 4-year journey up to date. Additionally, participating in as many of these workshops that are offered through a lot of these programs and organizations give us the opportunity for networking with potential investors, partners, and future customers. It expanded our reach and connections within the industry. Securing capital by participating in pitch competitions and any events in general helped us enhance our brand awareness and gain exposure to the broader audience. We also received guidance on relevant conferences and events to attend, which was vital to stay informed about our industry trends and for continuous networking. So I'm also thrilled to showcase the support it's had, the support from the deep tech community has had on Voxel's growth. So our engagement during a lot of these workshops and accelerators and incubators got us introduced to several key opinion leaders, which has been instrumental. We actually invested over 100 hours to understand their needs for mass adoption of our technology. This collaborative effort has led to us securing 10 pilot projects with prominent drug developers, validating the demand for our 3D tissue models. Moreover, our commercial success has been highlighted by the launch of our first product, the Universal BioInk Kit. It was launched this May. And furthermore, our successful fundraising rounds, such as our recent seed extension round for $1.5 million, which was oversubscribed. This actually led to the expansion evident in the establishment in our 6,000 square foot facility in downtown Victoria, BC. It gave us the opportunity to create custom lab spaces, including a wet lab, cell room, and optical lab. And lastly, our team was able to grow to 17 full-time employees. So a couple last things I want to share is our mission here at Voxel is clear, and that's to accelerate life-saving therapies, ensuring they reach patients sooner. But however, we owe a debt of gratitude to the resources that have supported our journey. So one piece of advice definitely is partaking in as much continuous mentorship from each one of these programs. It gives you the opportunity, of course, for funding, potential funding, and networking, and tapping into the networks of these larger organizations. These resources in general have played a vital role in the growth and success of Voxel here. Thank you so much. And I'm open to answer any questions at the end of the session.
Thank you very much, Assis. That's really quite interesting, and I guess we are. Well, I'm excited to see the questions later on about your journey. So now our last presentation is by Ms. Dol Matsundu. She's the CEO of and founder of FlutterCare. It's a health technology company that's developing a novel, non-invasive wearable device to monitor fetal health remotely. And Flutter Care has been supported by deep technology-focused programs such as Venture Labs' Hardware Catalyst Initiative that we heard about, and Techstars Industries of the Future. And Norma has also advocates for a national strategy to reduce stillbirth rates and improve perinatal loss support as a co-founder of the Canadian Collaborative for Stillbirth Prevention. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Sundu to speak to us about her startup journey to the seed stage. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Marie. I will share my screen. Alrighty, are you able to see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dilmit Sindhu and I'm the CEO and founder of Flutter Care. Our mission is to help families have safer and more informed pregnancy experiences. I've broken up my presentation into two parts. So the first part, I'll be introducing Flutter Care and our path. And then the second half, I will be sharing some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. To start, I'd actually like to introduce you to my friend, Nadine. Nadine was a policy analyst for the Government of Canada for 15 years, and she loved being a public servant and contributing to her community. So in 2012, Nadine and her husband were really excited to learn that they were expecting a baby girl who they named Judith. And Judith was a very active baby. Nadine and her husband would refer to her as their little kickboxer inside of Nadine's womb. But just 2 weeks before Nadine's due date, she noticed that Judith's movements were becoming less frequent and weaker. So she went to her doctor, who took Judith's heartbeat, told Nadine that baby's just run out of room towards the end of pregnancy, and sent Nadine back home. And just 2 days later, Judith's heartbeat actually stopped beating, and that's when Nadine's world changed forever. So following her stillbirth, Nadine was hospitalized for PTSD and depression. The grief and guilt that she experienced after was debilitating. And unfortunately, Nadine's story is not uncommon. Every 16 seconds, there is a baby that is born still globally. And in high-income countries, it's been shown that around 30% of these deaths can actually be prevented. And we've also seen that stillbirth does impact mothers. It contributes to maternal morbidity and mortality with a 14 times higher risk of severe complications during delivery. So part of the problem is that right now parents are receiving just sporadic checkups, but outside of the hospital, parents are left on their own to recognize when something is wrong. And this can cause delays that have major consequences. So in Nadine's case, she had done everything right. She took care of her health, took action when she felt something was wrong, but she had an undiagnosed maternal infection that was affecting Judith's oxygen. And so this begs the question of how can we enable greater care for families and to help providers offer the best care. And so at Flutter Care, we're developing a non-invasive wearable device to help parents and physicians continuously monitor maternal and fetal health from home. So the first technology that we actually developed was a mobile application. So this is a bit of a different path than we've seen with other hardware companies and medical device companies. We saw an opportunity to provide a tool to families sooner. And so we developed this and we're able to deliver it to many families who have been receiving the app really positively. It's helped us to really understand our users, how people respond to these types of technologies. And this has increased our confidence in the potential to develop a wearable device and how it can help families. So what we've been able to achieve with our hardware, we've developed novel technologies that are patent pending. We've been able to demonstrate accurate detection using simulations that are based on fetal biomechanics literature. And we're also in the process of getting our SP3000 certification to be able to use the device in a clinical trial, and have already identified our first clinical trial site. So these are some of the unique challenges as well of being a medical device. It is a much longer path. All of our technology is developed in-house, So we've been really focusing on developing strong IP, and because it does take certain steps to get to a place of being able to use the device on an individual, we have really focused on developing strong simulations so that we can continue to learn. We've also been really fortunate to be a part of programs such as the Hardware Catalyst Initiative, and are also part of the Techstars Industries of the Future program, which is one of Techstars' only hardtech and deep tech focused programs. And being in the US has also been a really unique opportunity to see how Canada has really done a great job of supporting hardtech companies, specifically with the grants that are available. There are a lot of colleagues of mine here at Techstars that are envious of the support that we have in Canada. So I just wanted to highlight that. So some of the lessons that I've learned, both as a hardtech founder, but also as a solo founder. So collaboration has been really key. Although I've been a solo founder, I've always had a team by my side. And I think that's been really critical to making the progress that we have. I find that these great team members can come really from anywhere, as well as mentors. So to give you an example, our very first employee was actually someone that I had met when I was 12 years old. She had gone to the same high school as me. We hadn't talked for about 6 years because we went to different universities. But I remember that she was a really creative and kind person. So she was actually our first UX designer. And then more recently, I met someone with really great experience developing products for the medical space, has taken these products to market. And I had met him at a mobility conference, which is completely unrelated to medical devices. So I think you can really find these people anywhere, especially if you have a mission that people really resonate with. Another thing that I have learned is staying really focused is important, and being mindful of what your highest priority is as a company. So for example, when we were working on our mobile app, I decided to dedicate really our efforts to developing that. And then as we move towards hardware, now our team is really focused on building out that technology. And I think as a founder, you can be pulled in many different directions, but when you have limited resources, it's really important to keep your attention on the most important thing. So that's something that I've been really mindful of moving forward as I grow the company. Another thing that I've learned is to always ask, and especially to be proactive with your needs. So especially when it comes to funding, I found that asking ahead of time can also be really helpful. And then also not being afraid to ask for support that might seem a little bit out of bounds. So as an example, when it came to filing our patents, I was aware that the Accelerate IP or Elevate IP program was coming out, but it wasn't launched yet. But I wanted to file a patent sooner to get that early date. So I actually had spoken with our IP lawyer about this situation, and he was willing to actually delay payment. And I had also contacted Accelerate IP to learn more about how that payment would work, and if it's possible to have a service that you've completed beforehand retroactively paid for. So yeah, that was also something that I've learned, as well as you shouldn't be afraid to just ask because people might be much more open to it than you realize. And I also wanted to highlight some of the key programs that have been helpful to us as a hardware company. The NRC IRAP program has been really critical, especially our ITA has been a great resource. And the IRAP program offers great grants to be able to cover R&D costs and to help reimburse some of the costs for employees. As I mentioned, the Accelerate IP and Elevate IP in Ontario is also a really great program for helping to cover 75% of your patent and trademark costs, as well as supporting some of your IP strategy. Prior to engaging in Accelerate IP, we had completed the NRC IP Assist program, which also allowed us to go directly into phase 3. So I think that was really helpful as well. And I had learned about that program through my NRC ITA. And then as well, Venture Lab has been really supportive to us, specifically the mentorship has been really transformative, as well as they have the great prototyping lab, which is hard to come by as a hardware company, as well as subscriptions and other perks that can really help to reduce costs. So, for example, software that's really critical to product development, such as like MATLAB, Altium, and then also helping to find other types of support, such as like Onshape. So yeah, that's some of the programs that I wanted to highlight. I also just wanted to mention that sometimes you do need to change how things are done. So Nadine and I, in September 2023, were able to help successfully advocate for new national fetal health surveillance guidelines. And so I think sometimes when you're working on a technology that is really pushing the boundaries, sometimes the environment isn't ready for it. And so it does require that leadership to help inform the public leaders as well as the public to help really elevate the status of healthcare and how it's delivered in the country. So yeah, I wanted to highlight that. And I wanted to close by mentioning that yes, hard tech is hard, but I believe that it can be some of the most profoundly impactful innovations. And for me personally, I'm not the most typical person that you would see as a hard tech founder. I studied engineering, started this company while I was in school in my undergraduate studies, started pursuing it full time after I finished school. But for me, the big motivation has been my mom's experiences with her pregnancies, and for me as a child, seeing how the memory of birth has impacted her long term. And so I think with hard tech, it requires that extreme dedication and sacrifice, but having a really strong why can help push you forward. And I believe that the people around you can see that too, whether that's your team, your mentors, or your investors. So it really takes a community to move things forward. But the passion is what has really helped me. And yeah, so with Flutter, we're really trying to help protect families. We believe that pregnancy is this really special experience. It reminds us of what a miracle it is to be human. Our company was actually named after the very first fetal movements, which are often described as flutters and are a memory that's really cherished by people. And so for us, we really want to protect that joy and connection that comes with pregnancy. And yeah, that's everything for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delma, for sharing your journey with us, and thank you to both of you for truly inspiring talk. So I'll ask all our speakers to join us, and now we'll just entertain questions and have a conversation in the about 40 minutes that are left. And we have a first question by Travis DeWolf, who says, the question for Assis, what specific non-dilutive funding did Voxel apply for and receive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think in general, for a lot of us, has been via grant applications, to be quite honest. So there is a portal out there known as there's a couple of resources online that give you kind of like a filter type option of a series of grants and awards you can apply to. But in general, I think a lot of our non-dilutive also came from awards in the stages of, we went through a kind of a competitive process via pitches and whatnot. So I would say that's the majority, at least for the first 2 years of Voxel. The third and fourth, now starting our seed and seed extension and looking forward to Series A, has been more so non-dilutive, I would say. But in the early stages, that's definitely where we primarily resided.
Great. I think a follow-up was, Richard, you mentioned SDTC, and Travis was saying, to the best of his knowledge anyway, they're not accepting any more applications. Do you have an update on that, or we don't know exactly what's going to happen with SDTC at this point?
I will say we don't know, but I'm speaking with the one person at SDTC every 3 weeks, every month, and actually the pressure is on the Minister Champagne to be able to solve the solution, because it's a I would say like that, it's a mess for the clean tech climate tech sector not having SDTC supporting companies in their development.
Merci. I also wanted to say, if you want to ask a question in French, that's fine too. I'll be happy to repeat the question in English, whatever is works for you. But while we wait for other questions, I wanted to ask you, Thomas, you said, nowadays it's a different world. So you have to be able to make things, a product, but you also have to be able to sell it. So what does that mean for, founders that come from, say, research labs and so on? How fast do you need to transition to a founder that can speak to the market of your application?
That's a great question, Marie. I think what I would say is, like a fund invests in a team. So if you're missing somebody on the commercialization, like someone that can actually lead the sales, and this person's a core person, right? Like usually this is the CEO's job, is that they can sell the product. Um, it would have to be in when you're asking for money. What doesn't work so much these days as give me capital now and I'll look for that person, because we're investing into a team. If you're missing somebody in your team, that doesn't really work. So, I always think of VC in some ways like a relationship, like marriage, right? If for you a sine qua non is I don't want to marry a smoker, and you say, well, as soon as we get married, I'll start quitting. Usually just best to wait for that person to quit smoking and then you get married, right? So
If I could add also, Marie, it's different having someone in business development than someone that can close a sale. And usually we got a lot of people that are very kind to do business development and trying to meet a lot of people, and they have in my time was business card like that. But it's tough to have someone signing a contract and be able to put a check with the sale. That's the core aspect of this department.
Okay, and Dilma, you've had the role of a CEO from the start. So, what's your perspective? It's just that you're ideally placed for your product, both in the development and sale. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I've grown into the role as well. So yeah, my background is in engineering, and I also have my training as a birth doula. But I think because I have this very strong dedication to the mission and a personal connection, like it's also allowed me to adapt. And while I may not have had the experiences right out of university, I think I've been supported by really great mentors that have also been able to share that knowledge with me and helped me grow into the role.
And Assis, you've also grown into the role that you have now, right? You're the engineer, product engineer, and now you're really in a very different role in the company.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I think it's a little bit about how I came in that's specifically in my business development role. I think especially with the tech, and then when we're looking at hardware and biotechnology, the ability to understand your technology in depth comes very much in handy when it comes to the BD side of things, because we're able to speak to our product, the benefits of it, the key features, also in more, in a way, simplistic terms, because oftentimes people aren't that interested in some of the very, very finicky technical details. So to be able to articulate a lot of those details, I think a little bit of my mechanical engineering background came a little bit in handy, I would say.
Mm. And Sep, you help find CEOs, the right CEO for the company at the right time. So how often is that true for all of the companies that you help, or just some of them? What's the sort of alignment in terms of expertise?
Yeah, so definitely the company need to get to the certain stage that they understand the need for having the someone with a deep knowledge as a CEO joining the team on that one. And definitely it should be a mutual understanding for both parties when how much the team can work, and then how much they can offer to the CEO to kind of to get work together. I mean, it's not only about the financials, it's about kind of the dedication, it's about alignment, it's about the understanding, the capabilities that both parties can bring to the table. So this is not for everyone. I'm saying that this is not for everyone, and it's really hard to even convince that the founding team. I don't want to call them kind of the current CEO, because what they do is not actually kind of the running the company as a CEO. They are just kind of the founding member doing something that they are passionate about, which is sometimes not exactly as a kind of the you do as a CEO does on that end, and convincing them to understand that the necessity of having someone with that background and expertise, it's a biggest challenge for us to kind of to get the people understand around that one. But as soon as they understand that, this is something that we always passion to support our companies in a matter of the starting with a fractional role, and then they will leave it to them to kind of to the get to that kind of to that stage, similar to what Park mentioned about the kind of to the with the type of the marriage. It's the same concept. This is something that we make the introduction, we understand, we set the level about the understanding of each side, and then we'll leave it to them to kind of to take it from there. Because by the end of the day, this is their decision. We are a facilitator to set the baseline around that one. And to be honest, kind of to then I can say maybe 2 out of the 10 companies that's struggling to grow and scale because of the founding understand it from the kind of to the initial conversation we have. It takes time, and sometimes it's kind of to it takes some serious kind of to the challenges for them to face to understand it on that one. But yeah, and it's, to be honest, it's not an easy job convincing researchers that maybe it's not your job to run a company.
Right. So we have a question in the chat from Brett, who says that he's a business development manager for a deep tech startup in Canada, and he's wondering about the hurdles one of the hurdles that's facing companies is actually commercialization. And so what's the sort of strategies to navigate the commercialization barrier, and as a deep tech professional, or as a sector in general? And it seems for him, it seems more like a mindset that needs to change in comparison to other global leaders in deep tech. So do we have to shift our mindset about deep tech in Canada? And in academia, we can be global leaders academically and have the technical expertise, and you have upfront costs that are expensive. But there are lots of there's a shocking the number of VCs that he meets that don't understand and invest in deep tech as much as they advertise. So what's how do you go get around that commercialization hurdle? And are there strategies that work better than others? Is there something specific in Canada that we need to address? Does anybody want to tackle this one? Thomas.
Yeah, so it's true that a lot of Canadian corporates are quite slow in adopting innovation. So I would argue you want to look overseas, especially starting with the US when they're quite open. Speaking on behalf of the VCs, we see a lot. If you can't articulate, if you this is a communication problem. If I've seen decks where like, okay, here's who we are, here's our org chart, here's our team, here's like, and all the different science, but you haven't answered the question, what problem are you trying to solve, and how painful is this problem, right? So when Assis and Doma are telling about their problem, it's a seriously big problem. You get excited about it, and they haven't even gone into the science of it. So if you can't articulate the size of the problem and why people will want to pay a lot of money to get rid of this problem, it's not a nice to have. I think that's where I would say the problem is, the issue is.
I would love to add on to this as well. On top of that, I think one of the things we found before going to commercialization was really understanding the market needs and on our customers. Because originally, when Voxel was founded, the original business model was actually to sell our printer, commercialize that. And if we had not done the 100+ hours of interviews with a lot of our target customers, we would not have realized that they're not interested in that right now. They're interested in the consumable. They actually want the tissue models to do the testing in-house or for us to do the testing for them. So if we had not known that, we would have gone through this very capital intensive, project and business model of creating these more modular printers that are up to a high resolution and find out that, hey, the industry doesn't want it. So I want to say another key thing is really understanding your customers. And the best way to do that is talk to them. And I'd want to say that would be pretty attractive to a VC as well, to see that we've been engaging with our customers, right? Like we know that that's what they want and we're doing exactly what they want. So when the product's ready, hey, they're gonna come and get it. Yeah.
If I can add also, if I understand exactly the question, a lot of young companies are excited by big logos. They come to us saying that I talked to the big names in the state or whatever, and they are not looking for the low-hanging fruit because they thought that having a big logos will do this the sale. But we'll think that if you have a big logo, it will take longer to get a sale than having, let's say, the second tier on the market that needs something to differentiate themselves to others. So in commercialization, it's tough when you get 2 or 3 big logos in front of you and you think that you're going to have a sale at the end of the month because it's a huge big machine and you will waste your time. And sometimes I told to my companies, try to get the small contract to a smaller company, and having those results, it will be better for you going after that to the big logos.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. And I guess Dilma as well. I mean, you actually engage with the patient, right? The person who had a lived experience for it, and so you have an end user case, basically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been very fortunate in that we've been able to develop very strong relationships with these families and organizations working in this space. And that's really given us insight into our product development. And one of the benefits of launching the app first was to be able to start to reach these people. And I think it's been really helpful in fostering these types of relationships. And as we go forward, it's going to be really critical as we build out our technology.
Mm-hmm. There's a question from Jen Kogan for Dolma that you talk about differences in funding between the U.S. And Canada, and can you provide a bit more information on that comment?
Mm-hmm. I think what I've observed, and I'm not that familiar with U.S. grant funding, but I think that here in Canada it seems much more accessible to every stage of company. Whereas from what I've heard from others, some of the other grants, which are really large that come out of the government, they're much more competitive and selective about who they give those grants to. So I think Canada seems to have a bit more of an even playing field in terms of bringing up innovations that come from founders that have very different backgrounds. So I think that's one of the benefits that I've seen.
Yeah, Thomas.
So how I interpret it was also from the private capital. So I would say there's 2 aspects. So one is that a lot of US funds are well capitalized, and $1 million check is not a lot of money for them. So they give quite generous terms, right? A lot of safes, a lot of uncapped safes and such. So a lot of Canadian founders get excited, but you got to read the fine print. Safes can be like ticking time bombs. So if you look at the Y Combinator safe term sheet, which you can look online, if you don't get the right valuation, the Y Combinator can end up with 20% equity in your next round when you raise on a priced round. And a lot of these term sheets have like little kickers, there's like little things in there. And two, I would say there's a different cultural aspect. Well, maybe I'm biased because I'm from BDC, but in a US fund, if you don't hit the metrics, right, you're gone. You're like a Tinder date. It didn't work. There's lots of other people on Tinder. Whereas in Canada, that's not the case, right? Like when there's a check made, it's more conservative. Like we got to make sure that the company we keep putting money into the company to bridge them to the difficult times. So it's what, there are trade-offs on what you take.
Mm-hmm. And that's I think you in our conversation, Thomas, you stressed that something has changed. We are very impatient now. So impatient society, but also that you have to meet those metrics. So you have metrics. That's you can't say, oh, I've met 10% of them or 25%. So how close to the goal do you have to be in order to for investors not to lose patience with you?
What's interesting now, I think we're in this weird transition period. So I foresee it's going to be a very confusing market for the next 18 months to 24 months. One, because a lot of people who are venture capitalists, their VC careers are going to come to an end because they don't have the track record. They will not be able to raise the money. So there's a risk of a lot of funds who are actually zombie funds. They may even write a check, but they will not have enough capital for the next round in case there's no other investors. So, so how I would think about it, like you're in the beginning of a new 10-year cycle. So this is another 7 to 10 years. This is not like 2019, 2018, where it's like, oh, I'm out after 3 to 4 years. This is a 7 to 10-year cycle. Sep was right. You have to really think, is this the career you want to do? Because Doma and Cease knows, like they are in the front line. This is not because, oh, I want to make money real fast. This is a long time with lots of bumps on the road. So I would say that this is a new 10-year cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's very
also,
interesting. Yep.
about the matrix, a few years ago, I'll say 3, 4 years ago, I can say to an entrepreneur, okay, the first round will be on your head because you give me the information, you seem to try something very interesting, but now it's not on the head of the management team, it's on the business. So it's on the company. So the company need to do the metrics, not just because you got a good management team. And that's the difference between what we got before because of the capital that was on the market. But now this capital shrink. So the metrics is key. That's why I said step by step and very good step, but just step by step, and you're going to be able to raise some capital for the future.
So one of the things that that we engage in, and I know that SEP does this as well, is really looking at the international scene. And part of what Thomas said, you have to be market ready, means going out to internationally and seeing what's going on, what those markets are, whether you're interpreting their need well, and if it's the right product for those markets. How early should companies go out internationally to, feel the temperature of the water? May perhaps open for funding from other countries into the company. But what's your advice as to how early you should be doing this?
So, definitely for the solutions that for the companies in the deep tech and the hard tech, again, the Canadian market is not a kind of the primary market for majority of the technologies developed in that area. And from the inception, if you are looking for some growth plan, your market might not ended up to be Canada at all, even kind of today in the later days. when you are in the kind of to the stage in the scale stage on that end. So as soon as kind of you start to thinking about the market fit product, it means that you need to understand the opportunity outside, and having the kind of the conversation with people have experience working outside of the Canada or know the market outside of the Canada. It could be the initial step, but it doesn't would be the kind, it would not be the kind of the enough. You need to kind of get out and then talk to the local customers you want to work with, understanding their all of the procedures and the regulations and all of kind of the barriers for your product to get to that market particularly. And to be honest, Canada, the federal government offered a great sort of to the support to supporting companies on that, and on the EDC side, on the Trade Commissioner Services side, even kind of with some grants opportunities available for early stage companies like what MyTax offer, or a couple other organizations, and the people we have as part of the Trade Commissioner Service or our embassies, to connect you to the local people. We have enough resources to start it, but by end of the day, you need to understand that who exactly in the local ecosystem you want to work with, and that have most of the knowledge on that one. And when it's get to the investment and getting the kind of to that traction from the investment, the international investment in the particular jurisdictions, you need to prove your existence there first. As much as kind of to the they recognize the value of the Canadian ecosystem and the talent we have here and technology developed here, this is about the ROI. This is about the kind of how much money you can bring and how much you would be successful in that one, and how much strategically they are aligned with what you are approaching on that end. So for my advice, always kind of to look at the kind of to the opportunities outside of the Canada, and for founders, it's not always about US. There are other opportunities out there. There are bigger markets out there than US that might be a little kind of to the challenge in the beginning when you look at it, but the long-term gain would be way higher and the competition would be less on that one. And we have companies that they started in Africa and then they moved to kind of to the other more developed part of economies on that end. And because of the lack of competition, they could secure enough revenue out of that one.
And that perhaps is what other organizations can do that support the deep tech ecosystem. Certainly, Deep Tech Canada works with the Trade Commissioner Service and the embassies, and we hold trade missions, and we take Canadian companies to various markets. And it's under, there are a number of things. There's a cultural aspect of whatever country you go to, and it's really patience that's needed. You have to go often. You have to build trust. They're based on trust relationships, and it takes a long time to do that. And so, there are programs like Can Export, Global Affairs that support these recurring missions and business to business meetings and so on. Very important. I think Richard said that he was at a company today that has benefited from this sort of early introduction to the Japanese market, and then eventually investments. So there's a role from various players, I guess, in the ecosystem in supporting companies and their success. So it's many of you have just touched on the system on this topic, and I know it's probably something that we'll have to come back to in another webinar. But as part of investment readiness, there's all the IP issue, and we could spend an hour or two just on IP, but perhaps just having a very brief perspective on how important is it, and does it depend on your sector, or it's always important? Because we see a lot of open innovation now. how does that affect the market readiness of a company? Anyone want to tackle this one? Yes, Thomas.
Yeah, we look at IP a lot. If you're in the software AI space, it's probably not going to be in any patent per se. It's hard to get a patent in software. It would have to be some differentiation, probably, like for example, in the data set, or if you have a particular expertise in that problem, so you can build the data set to train the algorithm. When it comes to hardware, it's easier, but then the question will be, well, semiconductor is probably one of the most brutally competitive market in the world. So if you're not 10x now, you're not going to be 10x 3 years from now. So that's the question. How do you keep up with the pace as well, too?
Mm-hmm. Right. Any other comments on IP? Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Richard.
Okay, I get it now. Sorry. It was a topic on our board meeting this morning with the company, and just with this example, the first negotiation you got with the university to transfer the IP, and I know that a lot of new entrepreneurs are not aware of the type of deal, so ask a lot of questions to other entrepreneurs that I've discussed with this university or other universities to be able to put some clause right now in the document that would help you, let's say a year or a year and a half after that. As an example, this morning, the company that we invest in, and we haven't seen it in our due diligence, they haven't put a clause to buy back the IP. They license it, they have the clause for the license, and the lawyer didn't see it. But actually, it's important for a VC to say, okay, you got a license, but can you have the ownership of the IP that you will have, and you will build with the company? So it's a strategy to build different IP and in your portfolio, but be able to have the ownership. It's the main thing that you will need for later on investment.
Yeah, and I guess in Canada we have the added complication that in some universities the inventors own the IP, and others the university owns the IP. So, the conditions around that and the ability to negotiate buying the IP, taking on the cost of protecting it too, is can can be a bit of nightmarish, I guess. Yes. Go on, Delma.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think IP education for your employees is also really important, because sometimes it'll be something that's completely new to them, and that's really critical to protecting your IP. And so something that was really great that was offered through Venture Lab was a training session that I was able to record and now have embedded as part of our onboarding process for our employees. So yeah, just wanted to add that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very important. There is a question that do you feel that the pursuit of funding was aligned to moving your business forward or distracted from it? And I guess that's for Dolma and Assis.
Let me see if I answer. Could you ask the question again? Sorry, I'm trying to see if I can.
Do you feel that the pursuit of funding was aligned to moving your business forward, or was it a distraction?
No. So I think this really depends on how it's pursued. If that makes sense. In the fact of, yeah, I think it all depends on how you go about your fundraising, in the sense of when Voxel started, at least with this last seed round specifically, I would say is on top of funding, another big thing that we focus on is creating partnerships with our investors, because they're the ones that introduce us to their networks. More so, they're usually quite well connected. For us, in the pharmaceutical industry per se, or people that could get us there. So I wouldn't say that it disrupted anything. I think if anything, it just assisted our situation. I guess the one thing to keep in mind is to not only be focusing on them. You still have to focus on your R&D efforts and everything associated with creating your product, not just fundraising. I would say.
Okay, thank you. Delma,
Yeah,
you have a perspective?
It also depends on how big your team is and what the roles are within it. So right now, my team is 6 people, and 5 of us have engineering backgrounds. But the only person who could really be focused on fundraising is myself. So that's been something important for me to also consider, is like, how much do I divide my time into like product development and helping that side of the business versus the fundraising and outreach side. And so I think it's just this balance of, what is critical to get to the next milestone, and where are your efforts best put into as the founder and CEO. So it really depends on, what kind of support you have and stage of your company and technology.
Okay, that's great. Roland, I see you have your hand up, but maybe you could put your question in the Q&A that's on top. There's a tab, or in the chat, if that's possible. I'll monitor the Q&A. I don't see any new questions, but perhaps we'll have one. So we have just a few minutes left, and while to see what perhaps Roland will write the question. Are there any final statements that you would like to share before we finish? Yeah.
I
Go
would
ahead,
say
Thomas.
I would say being a founder is like incredibly difficult, right? I grew up in a small business, so I would just encourage, all of you to get together, like leverage Deep Tech Canada, leverage Venture Lab to kind of get together. Like a lot of CEOs get together, CTOs get together. Even if it's just like a few of you just get together, like you're not alone. People have solved these kinds of problems before in different ways, so it's a great community. So. And I think that's probably one thing about Canada I've noticed, that culturally in Silicon Valley, everybody's telling everybody everything. But you always know what everybody's working on. Here, people tend to hide their cards a little bit, and I think that's wrong. So you're not alone.
I think that's a very important message, Thomas, because it seems that it's not for the faint-hearted. Faint-hearted. Sep?
Yeah, no, I just want to kind of build on what Thomas mentioned. And it is critical to understand that you are not alone in that journey. And there are other organizations to support you, but also there are founders that going through the same journey as you are going through that. And maybe kind of to the 1 or 2 step ahead. And so it means that you don't need to repeat the same mistake they made, or just kind of to that they can take the advantage of talking to them or with them about the opportunity, and building the community around the deep tech and hard tech with the Deep Tech Canada, or what we do here at Venture Lab. It's the purpose of getting all of this founders, supporters, collaborators, and stakeholders in around the same concept and the same idea to help the companies to grow and scale globally on that end. And that experience that, for instance, Mary asked about the international, everyone would have a kind of the different experience. And then by talking to the people that they might have a kind of some local connections can help you. They have some experience working with Thomas and his team as a BDC that give you kind of some insight that how you can kind of work with BDC deep tech team, for instance, to get the most kind of the advantage of opportunities they provide around that one. So in I don't know, I can say kind of in the 8 or 9 years ago when I joined the Canadian innovation ecosystem from Europe and South Asia, it was a little kind of that's weird that kind of that we don't have that much open concept of talking about who's working about what, and then what are the resources. and all the stuff, particularly in the deep tech area. But I have seen a lot change on that notice, and I hope kind of that we will have a kind of to the more of these platforms and opportunities for the deep tech companies to can get together and then kind of to spend time, because all we heard in the past 20 years all about the software SaaS, but without having the kind of to the deep tech companies as a home of all of those kind of to the solutions, it would not happen. But we never had a light on that one, and I hope by the collaboration between all the stakeholders, like Ecofuel Fund, BDC Deep Tech Canada, HardTech Investor Network, Venture Lab, and others, will have opportunity for staging the success of these companies and celebrate more of this community that they can work together to elevate Venture Lab knowledge-based economy to the another layer.
Thank you very much. So, we're almost at the end. I want to thank all of our speakers for taking the time to share their experience and expertise with us today. So thank you very much, Richard, Thomas, Sepp, Assis, and Dolma for being here. And thank you for our audience and for your excellent questions. And I hope you'll join us for our next webinar, and stay tuned as to the topic of our next webinar. If you have some suggestions, don't feel free to contact us with some of your ideas. So thank you very much to all of you. Merci beaucoup à tous. Merci Richard aussi.
Merci,
En
bonne
français
journée
cette
tout le
fois-ci.
monde.
Merci.
Thank you so
Au revoir.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.